June 28, 1966. 14 American cities, connected by one telephone line, the largest conference call the auto industry had ever attempted. On the other end sat General Motors, the biggest car company on planet Earth, about to do something it had never, ever done before. Publicly admit that somebody else was winning. The target was a Ford, a cheap, pretty, absurdly popular Ford. And what GM said on that call would ignite the longest, pettiest, most glorious rivalry in automotive history. This is the story of the day Detroit declared war on itself. Let me paint you a picture. April 17, 1964. The World's Fair in New York. Henry Ford II pulls the cover off a car with a long hood, a short deck, and a price tag so low the accountants probably fainted twice. The Ford Mustang. It wasn't the fastest car in America. It wasn't the most advanced. It was something far more dangerous. It was the car everybody suddenly needed, at a price everybody could almost afford. Detroit had spent decades selling transportation. Ford had just started selling Desire with a payment plan. That very same day, the Mustang hit Ford showrooms across the country, and America collectively lost its mind. Nearly 22,000 orders in one day. One salesman in Texas reportedly watched 15 customers bid on the same car, and the winner slept in it overnight so nobody could steal his deal. Let that sink in. A grown man spent the night in a parked car at a dealership to protect a Ford. Ford had projected 100,000 sales per year. They burned through that forecast in about 4 months, presumably while the marketing department openly wept with joy. By its first birthday, the Mustang had moved more than 418,000 cars. 418,000. That's not a product launch. That's a gold rush wearing chrome bumpers. It shattered the industry record for a first-year model, quadrupled Ford's own projections, and turned every other executive dining room in Detroit into a very quiet, very uncomfortable place. Somewhere, in a General Motors boardroom, a man in a gray suit looked at those numbers and felt his lunch attempting an escape. Now, historians will tell you, correctly, that the Mustang wasn't even first. The Plymouth Barracuda beat it to market by 16 days. 16 days. Plymouth got there first and nobody noticed, which is possibly the most Plymouth sentence ever spoken. Because being first doesn't matter if nobody remembers you showed up. The Mustang didn't just enter the pony car market. The Mustang defined it, named it, and then charged everyone else admission. The Barracuda got a participation trophy and a footnote. History is written by the winners, and apparently, so are sales brochures. March 2, 1966. Less than 2 years after launch, the 1 millionth Mustang rolls off the line. 1 million cars in under 24 months. For context, Ford's previous gamble, the Edsel, took 10 years of development to fail spectacularly in 2. The Mustang did the exact opposite. Minimal development drama, maximum cultural earthquake. There were Mustang fan clubs. Mustang pedal cars for children. A Mustang in a James Bond film. It wasn't a car anymore. It was a national mood, and General Motors was not in the mood. Here's the truly absurd part. GM wasn't losing. Chevrolet was beating Ford in small cars, mid-size cars, and full-size cars. They were winning almost everywhere that mattered, except the one place everyone was looking. The Mustang owned the headlines, the youth market, and the future. And in Detroit, losing the future is the only loss that counts. The world's largest corporation found itself in the one position giant corporations handle worst of all, playing catch-up in public against a rival that was thoroughly enjoying it. GM's first response was, well, let's call it creative accounting with extra steps. They pointed at the Chevrolet Corvette, a rear-engine compact that had been on sale since 1960, and said, essentially, we already have one of those at home. Except the Corvette wasn't designed to fight the Mustang. It was designed 4 years before the Mustang existed. Sending it into this battle was like sending your accountant into a knife fight. Technically a response, just not one anybody involved felt good about. The market agreed. GM initially hoped the sporty Corvair Monza could hold the line, before realizing, with mounting corporate horror, that you cannot win a brand new war with a leftover army. So Chevrolet did what wounded giants do best. They threw money at the problem. A crash program. A completely new car, on a completely new platform, built with one single, beautifully petty mission statement. Make the Mustang regret existing. Within months of the Mustang's launch, the project was alive, funded, and very, very angry. Inside GM, the secret car carried a code name, Panther. Panther. And credit where it's due, that is a fantastic code name. Panther sounds dangerous. Panther sounds fast. Panther sounds like something that hunts small horses for sport, which was precisely the point. The engineering brief called for a wide stance, aggressive styling, and enough engine bay real estate to hold anything Chevrolet felt like installing. Ford had built a pony. Chevrolet was building the thing that eats ponies, and they knew it. Let that marinate for a second. The largest car company on Earth, reduced to a secret revenge project with a cat name. I'll wait while you process that. Then, in June of 1966, the theater began. 200 automotive journalists received invitations to a mysterious Chevrolet press event. And on June 28th, Chevrolet connected press pools in 14 cities on one telephone line, a record-breaking conference call, staged with all the subtlety of a Bond villain revealing his master plan. Understand something. Car companies announce cars with brochures. Chevrolet announced this one like it was a declaration of war. Because, plot twist, it was. On the line, Chevrolet's general manager, Pete Estes, reportedly opened with a line for the ages: "The Panther is dead, long live the Camaro," which is objectively magnificent corporate theater. He killed his own codename, live, in front of 200 journalists, just for the drama of it. Somewhere, a Ford public relations man heard about this call and quietly poured himself a very tall drink. It was 11 in the morning. He earned it. But wait, it gets better. The press asked the obvious question: what on earth is a Camaro? Chevrolet claimed it came from Old French slang, meaning friend or comrade. One small problem: that word is camarade. Camaro is not actually a French word. It is, however, the name of a small town in Sicily, which GM reportedly discovered afterward, presumably from a very amused letter. So to recap, the world's largest corporation invented a word, claimed it was French, and got fact-checked by Italy. 1960s, Detroit, ladies and gentlemen. And then came the sentence that started a 57-year war. When reporters pushed harder on what a Camaro actually was, the answer, reportedly from Estes himself, became automotive scripture. A Camaro is a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs. That's it. That's the whole declaration of war, delivered by telephone with a straight face. No car company before or since has trash-talked this beautifully. By the way, if you appreciate corporate pettiness executed at this level of excellence, subscribing costs you nothing, which is cheaper than a Camaro, and it eats nothing. September 12, 1966, the press finally met the animal in person, and on September 29th, the 1967 Chevrolet Camaro went on sale across America, 29 months after the Mustang's debut. In corporate time, that's a lightning strike. In market time, it meant the Mustang had spent 2.5 years selling cars, building loyalty, and redecorating the entire segment while Chevrolet was still arguing about the name. The animal was finally loose. The question was whether there was anything left to eat. To be fair to Chevrolet, and it physically pains me to be fair to anyone, the Camaro itself was genuinely well executed. New F-body platform, shared with a Pontiac cousin called Firebird arriving a few months later. Coupe or convertible. A menu of engines stretching from a humble economy, 6-cylinder to big block V8 Thunder, plus the Rally Sport appearance package with hideaway headlights, because nothing says Predator like a car that winks at you. This wasn't a rushed answer. This was a fully loaded arsenal wearing a bow tie. And Chevrolet saved its best trick for the spec sheet. The Super Sport. The SS 350 debuted an entirely new engine, a 350 cubic inch V8, rated at 295 horsepower, measured the old-fashioned, optimistic way Detroit loved back then. Here's the beautiful part. In 1967, the 350 existed in exactly one car in Chevrolet's entire lineup. Not the Corvette, not the Chevelle, only the Camaro. Chevrolet built what would become one of the most legendary American engines of all time and reserved its debut for the Mustang Eater. That's not product planning. That's a love letter written in gasoline. 295 horsepower. 295. Wrapped in a package costing $211 over the base coupe, with stiffer springs, wide tires, a louvered hood, and a bumblebee stripe around the nose so the neighbors would know your intentions. Chevrolet moved more than 34,000 Super Sports in year one, which means 34,000 Americans looked at a car marketed as a horse-eating predator and said, "Yes, that one, in red." Ford, meanwhile, did not spend 1967 hiding under a desk. The Mustang got its first major redesign. Bigger, more muscular, more aggressive, and, for the first time, a big block option. The 390 cubic inch V8, rated at 320 horsepower. On paper, Ford now outgunned the SS 350. The pony had grown teeth of its own, which set up the exact confrontation everyone in America wanted to see. and which both companies pretended they weren't obsessed with while being completely, hopelessly obsessed with it. And here's a detail that tells you everything about how calculated this war was. The base Mustang Coupe stickered at $2,461. The base Camaro, within about $20 of that number. $20. Two multi-billion-dollar corporations staring at each other across Detroit, pricing their weapons like two gas stations on opposite corners. This wasn't a marketplace anymore. This was a duel, and both sides had agreed on the pistols. So which animal was actually faster? Period magazine testing put the SS 350 at 0 to 60 in the high 7s, 7.8 seconds in one famous test, 8 flat in another. The Mustang GT 390 clocked in the low 7s. Roughly half a second between them, quarter-mile times landing in the mid-15s for both. Motor Trend called the two directly comparable, which is magazine language for close enough that the argument will outlive everyone involved. And it has. People are still fighting about this in comment sections. Some of them are in this comment section, right now, warming up. But here's my favorite twist. The press of 1967 was thoroughly unimpressed with both gladiators. Car and Driver's own review of the Camaro was surprisingly critical. They called it an American interpretation of a European Gran Turismo, then concluded it wasn't yet the success they'd been hoping for. Ouch. Meanwhile, Car Life tested the Mustang 390 and delivered one of the great burns in print history. The big engine made it quicker than the 289, but, quote, not 101 cubic inches quicker. The Superburger, they said, needed a little more mustard. 1960s car journalists did not come to play. Still with me? Good. Take a breath, because the war is about to go underground. And honestly, a small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs remains the single greatest sentence any executive has ever said into a telephone. That line deserves to live forever on a garage wall or across somebody's chest. Some sentences are simply too good to stay in 1966. Because while the SS battled the GT in showrooms, Chevrolet was quietly building something illegal adjacent. In December of 1966, a Chevrolet engineer named Vince Piggins created an option package called the Z28, a race car with license plates. Its heart was pure factory hot rodding. Engineers took the block from the 327, dropped in the short-stroke crankshaft from the 283, and created a 302 cubic inch V8 that slid neatly under the Trans Am racing limit of 305 cubic inches. Homologation, they call it. Legalized cheating, I call it. Beautiful. Glorious. Parts bin cheating. Now here's where it gets properly ridiculous. Chevrolet built this street-legal race weapon and then told absolutely no one. The Z28 appeared in no sales literature, zero advertising. Most buyers had no idea it existed. Even the spec sheet was a cover story. Chevrolet rated the engine, with a completely straight face, at 290 horsepower, while period estimates put the real number closer to 360. Total sold in 1967, 602 cars. 602. Chevrolet built a Mustang hunting missile, classified it like a state secret, and then lied about the warhead. Corporate logic. It's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to make lawyers comfortable. The secrecy went deeper. Chevrolet's Camaro entered the 1967 Trans Am Championship through Roger Penske's private racing team, with factory support that, officially, did not exist. Wink. GM's corporate policy frowned on open racing involvement, so the help arrived through side doors and quiet channels, like an allowance from a parent who publicly disapproves of your hobby. So let's tally the strategy, announce the war by telephone, hide the best weapon from customers, and race in disguise. General Motors declared war on Ford and then fought half of it in secret from itself. On track, the animal showed real claws. Mark Donohue put Penske's Camaro in victory lane during its debut season, 3 wins by year's end. Impressive. Unfortunately for Chevrolet, a magazine editor turned racing driver named Jerry Titus spent 1967 absolutely refusing to lose, taking 4 victories in a Shelby-prepared Mustang and dragging Ford to the manufacturer's championship. Final margin, 2 points. And the runner-up wasn't even the Camaro. Hold that thought, because it's about to get so much worse for General Motors. The team that nearly stole the title was Mercury, Ford's own luxury division, with the brand new Cougar, which is essentially a Mustang that went to private school. And the humiliation wasn't finished. Motor Trend's Car of the Year for 1967 went, by unanimous vote, to the Cougar. Not the Camaro. The trophy for Best New Car of the Camaro's launch year went to the Mustang's fancy cousin. So in the war, GM started. The 1967 scoreboard read, Ford first, Ford's other brand second, and General Motors, the company that made the phone call, third. You cannot write comedy this good. Detroit just lived it. Then came the only scoreboard that pays the bills. 1967 production, Ford Mustang, 472,121 cars. Chevrolet Camaro, 220,906, more than double. The small, vicious animal that eats Mustangs sat down at the table, looked at the menu, and the Mustang ordered seconds. First blood, first round, first year, Ford by a knockout margin. And now, the statistic that should be framed in Dearborn. 1967 threw 3 brand new challengers at the Mustang at once: Camaro, Firebird, and Cougar. Add up all 3, roughly 454,000 cars. The Mustang alone outsold all 3 of them, combined. One car in its 4th year against the entire coordinated counterattack of General Motors and Mercury, and it still finished on top of the pile. If 1967 was a war, this was the moment Ford planted the flag and asked if anyone else wanted to try. I'll give you a moment. Breathe. It's almost over, for Chevrolet anyway. But, and this is where honest history beats easy jokes, the Camaro was no failure. 220,000 cars in year 1 meant roughly 3% of every automobile sold in America. That's a massive debut by any sane measure. And the Mustang felt the hit. Its production fell 22% from the year before, squeezed by 4 new rivals and a factory strike late in the year. The Camaro failed to unseat the king, but for the first time since 1964, the king was checking his mirrors, constantly. And Chevrolet's revenge was already loading. The following 2 seasons, Donahue and that Penske Camaro steamrolled the Trans Am Championship, back-to-back titles. The Z28 went from state secret to legend. The Camaro and Mustang would spend the next 5.5 decades trading punches through gas crises, horsepower wars, terrible decades, glorious comebacks, a rivalry running 57 years until the Camaro finally left the stage after 2024. The animal never did eat the Mustang, but it never stopped hunting either. So what did June 28, 1966 actually accomplish? Everything. One telephone call turned a one-horse market into the defining rivalry of American performance. Ford won 1967 on every scoreboard that existed: sales, racing, even the awards banquet. But Chevrolet won something stranger and more permanent: a nemesis. Because legends aren't built by winning alone. Legends are built by having an enemy worth fighting forever. The Mustang made the Camaro necessary. The Camaro made the Mustang immortal. And it all began with a corporation, a telephone, and a small, vicious animal that hadn't eaten anything yet. If the story of corporate warfare, secret race cars, and the greatest trash talk in automotive history earned your respect, hit that subscribe button. The war has 57 years of battles left, and we're covering every single one. Drop a comment and settle it forever. 1967 Camaro or 1967 Mustang, which one leaves your garage? This is Car Chronicles, where the animals are vicious, the corporations are petty, and the phone call is always dramatic.